The wandering trolley finds itself a stone's throw from the Belgian-German border, on the Belgian side of the border. I slept at a campsite, a sort of farm-cum campsite, about 100 meters from here. Well, really this is an extension of the campsite, of the farm-cum campsite. And here are some animals. The eponymous trolley is not with me right now. I will return to it. But I thought I'd spend a little bit of time with these animals, discussing a few bits and bobs. Now I know that it was quite a few weeks ago now, but I'd like to say a few words about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, what it meant or appeared to mean then, and where it stands now. Obviously, this being the 24th of August 2024, not even in the same month as the event, I'm not delivering news. In fact, if I were delivering news, then the pigeon post, that's the literal pigeon post. At university we had something called the pigeon post, how letters were delivered to individual students in their colleges. It was a sort of intra-university, no, not intra, we're talking about intra-university, inter-college, interdepartmental, but intra-university messaging system. But the original pigeon post, which I believe was messages being sent by pigeon, although I'm not sure actually, I just made that assumption. I think pigeons would carry something in their claws, although I haven't thought about this, or looked into it, or verified it. But as I say, if I were delivering news, the news of Donald Trump's attempted assassination, then the pigeon post would lie ahead of us as a means of communication, and when it came, it would represent a tremendous breakthrough. So here I am amongst these animals. So what are my thoughts? Well, the event, the image of blood streaming down Trump's face from his ear was of course extremely powerful. And then that defiant fight. Now, of course, if you have within the last 60 seconds survived an assassination attempt, which doesn't happen too often to people, or rather, you know, even if we only look at the class of people, at the group of people who have survived an assassination attempt, which is very small, then most of the time those people will not find themselves within the first 60 seconds after that attempt. Does that make sense? In other words, you have what I'm trying to say is you have one can look differently on the actions of somebody who somebody tried to kill within the last 60 seconds than at the actions generally from that point onwards of such a person. You know, if it happened to me, say, 3 years ago, it's different. Yeah. Now, more precisely, what I'm saying is that you should be prepared to grant somebody wriggle room. They should have the space to respond in pretty much whichever way they see fit. That's called license. Yeah? Now, under certain circumstances, license is granted to react in ways or behave in ways which would otherwise be inappropriate. So, one may be prepared to be indulgent here. That doesn't necessarily mean that one welcomes the response. So let's consider Trump and his assassination attempt, or rather the assassination attempt of Donald Trump. So here are my thoughts. Firstly, it was quite something the way that people felt that this represented an absolute coup for him in electoral terms. There was that palpable sense at the time. It didn't help that Biden, appeared to be a sort of, I mean, I don't know how to be charitable about this, but he seemed to be a sort of demented, a little bit, right? But in the aftermath of the attempt, the assassination attempt, there were, I think, mainstream publications in America asking the question, has Donald Trump just won the election? By sustaining an assassination attempt and responding in the way he did. Now, getting to his feet as he did was, of course, intrinsically brave. It was a display of courage that doesn't have to be contextualized or explained further in order to be accepted. Yeah. Here we are, come down to be amongst the animals. There were some humans here before, and humans tend to take exception to being filmed. There we go. Dramatic setting. A railway line running overhead. One sheep amongst the ponies. So he threw his hand up in the air, his fist up in the air, and said, "Fight, fight." He shouted, "Fight, fight." It was very impressive. It was a powerful image, but a profoundly undemocratic one. Why was it profoundly undemocratic? Well, there are a couple of reasons. The first concerns whom, or rather who is to be fought. To whom is the fight to be taken? Now, the man who attempted to kill him was taken out by the snipers, Secret Service, or what have you. This person was a political assassin. I mean, simply put, a rare breed. Was he saying that the fight should be taken to the guild of political assassins? We will not accept this anymore. We will not tolerate these outrageous attempts on the lives of democratic politicians? Is that what Donald Trump was saying? And when he received that great applause and cries of "We love you, Donald," did it feed into that? The yearning amongst his supporters for political assassins to be dealt with once and for all. Of course, that's not the case. The fight was to be taken to something else. Politics as usual. Democratic politics as usual, with all its disappointments and all its self-serving corruption and the rest of it. That's where the fight was to be taken. Donald is a new broom. Now, 20th century history tells us that new brooms can signal big danger. I was recently reading the autobiography of Hus, the commandant at Auschwitz. He was given 2 weeks. Write it and then we're going to kill you. It's quite a proposition, though. Bit hairy. He earned it, obviously. But he would refer to the Weimar Republic as the system. Contemporary German politicians on the far right, the AfD, refer to their mainstream rivals as system politicians. So I don't know, maybe there's a thread there, who knows. But that's the question that has to be asked. To what was the fight to be taken? It is possible that what he was really saying was that the fight was to be taken to a mainstreamism that had on this particular occasion culminated, become radicalized with this effort to take out, this is the implication, with this effort to take out this would-be new broom. I'm not sure how new this new broom was last time. I'm not sure. I suppose he had the disadvantage of operating within a strong constitutional system, so you can only do so much damage then. It occurs to me that perhaps many of the people who think that he's a good idea in America, and I've spoken to many people, many reasonably minded people, who say, people who don't have the vote in America, Britons, for instance, who say that they would vote for Donald Trump. They don't approve him entirely, but they would vote for him if they had the opportunity to. And I asked one such person recently, a lovely chap I met on my travels, who in fact gave me a lift, or a friend of his gave me a lift to Bruges, when I arrived too late in Calais to get the last train to Lille. I'm throwing all these place names at you. I shan't go into the details. It's a series of not wholly interesting contingencies. But he said this. He said, well, I would vote for him because of the alternative and what have you. And I wonder whether people are prepared to vote for Donald Trump precisely because he can only do so much damage. Precisely because he is anchored in this system of, strong constitutional checks and balances. I would be much more wary, or I assume that people would be much more wary of lending their support to such a man in a far weaker democratic system. There is nothing in the first 40 years or so of his professional, adult life, which hinted at this political role that he would play at this final stage? Nothing. Businessman, showman, TV personality, you're fired, etc. Property tycoon, big city person, New Yorker. I think it's much more likely he spotted a gap in the market. There was a gap in the market. He's exploited it. He's given it voice. He identified something within the contemporary American political consciousness or culture and has managed to do extraordinary things with it. No question. I think there would be no alternative to Trump. I think only Trump can do what Trump is doing. Anyway, it's ever so easy to lose one's train of thought amongst the animals. So that's one reason why it's undemocratic. It's undemocratic because the implicit target is the democratic system, the democratic order, which is messy, which is unsatisfactory in many ways, you know? The least bad, what was it Churchill said? The least bad, the least worst. Some sort of... There's the train. There's the train. The least bad system. Was that it? Now, least bad doesn't sound very exciting, does it? If you're looking for complete deliverance, if you're a utopia hunter of whatever hue, if you're a utopia seeker, if you want total deliverance, then least bad does not sound very good. So the people who shouted, "We love you, Donald," and this brings me on to the second part of the second component, or the second undemocratic component of the whole phenomenon. We love you, Donald. What is the appropriate level of adulation for a democratically elected? Hallo? Entschuldigen Sie? Ich habe keine Ahnung. Nein, ich habe nichts mit denen zu tun. Nein, ich bin nur Gast auf dem Campingplatz. Alles gut. Ziege. Ja, es gibt verschiedene Tiere. So, the second component, well, I was very, very pleasantly interrupted there. Yes, we love you, Donald. Adulation. What is the appropriate level of adulation for a democratic politician to enjoy? Does anyone remember John Major? Now I think, okay, he's British. Let's say, I don't know, Gerald Ford. Going back a bit. Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, George Bush Sr., even George Bush Jr. A little less so. But I would say George Bush Sr., John Major. For folks this side of the Atlantic, let's settle on John Major. Now, John Major was not a particularly charismatic politician. Yeah? I don't think anyone would have shouted, "We love you, John. We're prepared to do everything for you, John." John Major won the election in 1992, somewhat unexpectedly, because he was trusted to handle the economy better. Mortgage rates, that sort of thing. Interest rates, all of that sort of stuff. A sober calculation was carried out. And it doesn't have to be wholly self-interested, you know? There's an enlightened self-interest. There's a concern for your fellow citizens. There is a concern for the health of the community. And there's self-interest. And of course, self-interest and the health of the community, they can't be wholly disentangled from one another. But this is the sort of calculus that we're talking about. Not "we love you, Donald." We are prepared to submit completely to you, Donald. I want a democratically elected politician. I want a leader. I think I would rather have a leader, and I mean, I have friends on the left as well who would respond to what I'm saying with scorn. There are people on the left wanting deliverance as well, of a slightly different sort. But they wouldn't be impressed by my thesis. But I would like someone who is going to keep the show running smoothly, keep our passions at bay, and and I say this as a sort of proxy for other things, because I don't own a house. Keep mortgage, or rather, I don't own a house on which I have a mortgage. Keep mortgage rates low. I am not looking for someone who is promising deliverance. Fascism is often mistaken for democracy. Communism too. It's a different narrative. There's a different analysis to be made there another time. But fascism, at least initially, is sustained by powerful mass movements. And you could say, well, these are mass movements of the people. They are popular. So why not democratic? Demos, the people, democratic. But I think you're moving towards the beginnings of fascism. And I think fascism only really requires a sort of mass. Fascism only really ever requires consent, if ever, at the beginning. Right? Now, the popular feeling is one of over-identification with the group. You do not lend your support to the leader, subject to their delivering and doing well. You grant the leader your support, your obedience, your submission in perpetuity. It's total. Your ability as an individual to withdraw your consent is forfeited. It is a mark of treason. In a fascist state, the bar for treason is set very low indeed. Something similar operates in a left-wing totalitarian state as well from the 20th century. I think the internal mechanics may be slightly different, theoretically, but yeah, the bar for treason is very low. And you can understand why. This is our wonderful, loving, devoted leader who works night and day for us. We are one the people. To withdraw from that, what sort of a person would you be? Could you be? To betray that, to betray the leader and the mass, the great mass of the people, the collective, what kind of a person could you be? Well, our wonderful, messy system is predicated just on that. Reason, individual reason, not collective feeling. So we love you, Donald, spoke of the latter. Now I found it extraordinary the way that even commentators, psephologists, observers in the more reason-based tradition responded to this event and to Trump's response to the attempt on his life. They took their hat off to him. They said, okay, well, you know, normally I'm a critic of this sort of Trump's kind of politics, but wow, what a coup. It is the outmaneuvering of reason by feeling, by image, by affect. Affect. Is it affect? I think it's affect. But of course that's not the end of the story. Joe Biden was replaced, as he had to be really, by Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris appears to be now enjoying a slight advantage in the polls. Now this is an extraordinary turnaround. I don't know whether she's any good. Maybe her current advantage is just an expression of tremendous relief at the fact that she isn't Joe Biden. But here's the final point. If all those weeks ago the attempted felling of Donald Trump and his response thereto, specifically, of course, it's the response, particularly it's the response. If all those weeks ago it appeared almost epoch-defining, and certainly electorally a tremendous coup, does it not feel now, does it not seem now, in a sort of two-dimensional, cartoonish way, as though it had almost never happened? It's like it never happened. What times we live in.